Ah, Halloween, the witching hour. What a wonderful time of year. A time for costumes, candy, and most importantly, fear and horror. Greetings and hello again. I see you're here for my annual stories of terror. But this time, I have something good in store for all of you. So sit back, relax, light the jack-o'-lantern, and turn off the lights. Because I'll be telling you selected stories of horror from the dark realm of Reddit. And also, a bit of warning. This is for older audiences, so no kids allowed. If you ignored this warning, well, you've been warned. And also, have a nice dreams. Ever since I was a young boy, I've always been different. Not psychotic, demonic, or anything like that. Just not quite like the rest. I look different, I act different, I dress different, and I think different. This made it easy for the beautiful people of the world to mess with me a lot. It used to bother me growing up, but I've gotten older, not so much. Now I just look at the source and think, screw them, they'll be dead soon or later. I never been too lucky with the ladies either, so after years of failed relationships, I find myself alone, friendless, and living in a 20-year-old trailer that I'm renting from a friend of a friend of a friend. It doesn't really matter who. Anyway, I found myself, I'm tired of being alone. I can probably get another girlfriend, but she'll just get on my nerves and we break up. Same old song and dance. No, this time I want a companion. Someone who is happy to see me when I come home from work. Someone who likes to go for walks. Someone to ride shotgun in the car. Someone who loves me for who I am, not for what I have to offer them. I'm gonna get a dog. The very next day, I got up, hopped in my car, and drove to the local ASPCA to get myself a dog. I walked in, told the lady behind the desk what I was looking for. Nothing big, a small dog, a lap dog, so to speak. She said, sure, right this way. She took me into the kennel area and showed me many types of little dogs, many pictures, chihuahuas, even a few Pomeranians, etc. They were all lovely dogs, but none of them really seemed to click with me. Then out of the corner of my eye, at the very end of the cages, all by itself sat a metal box. The box was fully enclosed with a tiny barred window in the door, resembling a prison cell. I said to the lady, what is that? She looked at me as if I wasn't supposed to ask and said, that's Roscoe. We're not really sure what kind of dog he is. He's been returned to us several times due to behavioral issues. He's scheduled to be put down later today. That's why he's in the box. I'd like to see him, I said. She said, I don't think that's a good idea. Starting to get annoyed, I said, the sign out front says, all dogs ready for adoption. He is in here. He can't be adopted. Now I want to see him. She said, yes, sir, with a you're going to regret it tone, and took me over to the box, unlocked the door and opened it. Then I saw him. This little guy looked rough. His brown fur was matted to his body. Crusty pieces of I don't know what in the corner of his eyes, like he's been crying. His nails were a bit long and sharp. His eyes were jet black, with the slightest hint of red in them. To be quite honest, he looked like he just crawled out of the sewer and smelled like it too. He had an odor that reminded me of the summers I spent helping my uncle at his funeral home. He smelled like death, but he was friendly. He ran out of the box, ran up to me, let me pick him up, and licked my face for what he had to have been at least 10 minutes. He was wagging his tail and just going crazy with excitement. So I was. I told the lady, "This little guy ain't dying today. Roscoe has a new home." A look of worry fell over her face. After filling out some paperwork, getting his dog license, I took Roscoe home. First on the agenda was a bath. He was rather calm in the bath. Seemed to enjoy it, really. After that, I dried him off and brushed him out. I had to use one of my old brushes since I didn't have a dog brush. We went to the local pet store next. I won't mention the name of the place due to legal matters. I'll just say the people there are smart about pets. We get all the necessities needed to take care of our new friend. My new friend. The drive home started out normal, just driving down the road. I've always been a cautious driver, always doing the speed limit or below. Apparently, the guy in the car behind me didn't like it and sped up to pass me. Everyone usually does. He pulled alongside and me yelled, "Get the hell out of the way, moron. Learn how to drive." Roscoe went crazy, barking and jumping at the dash as the guy passed, growling, showing all his teeth, drooling and clawing the dash. The red tint in his eyes was becoming to be more apparent now. He began banging his head against the windshield in a crazed attempt to get the guy. Hit it so hard it split his head open, blood running down his face, on the windshield on dash. Oh my god! What the hell is happening? Roscoe, calm down. Stop. Roscoe, stop. I finally had to pull on the side of the road and Roscoe's still frantic. I throw an old shirt over him so he couldn't see, grabbed him and telling him it's okay. It's over. And over again. His body went limp. I thought he was dead when I pulled the shirt from over him, and the second I did, his eyes opened. He was wide-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to play, like nothing ever happened. What the hell? I took the shirt and held it over his forehead, stopping the blood. I washed him up fully when we got home, cleaning the dash and windshield as well. We spent the rest of the day playing in the yard and hanging around the house so he could use to his new home. The trailer park isn't the best place to live. The lot rent is cheap, but that's the only good thing about it. It's a dirt road in a U shape with trailers running parallel with the roads on both sides. This is apparent when the term trailer trash came from. It's not that the people are bad or anything, it's just cleanliness isn't their way of life. Old refrigerators, car parts, and various other piles of junk clutter their yards. The trailer at the end in front of the park had been raided a couple of times by the local police, and there is always cars pulling in and out there. I think they're selling drugs, but that's none of my business. In the middle of the park is what the park manager calls a playground. In Constance, an old, beat-up swing set, a rickety metal slide, a sandbox, and most of the cats around here use as a litter box. Most of the older folks here just sit out there and talk all day. No kids ever played there. Who can blame them? It's a lawsuit waiting to happen. The night I realized Ruskell was the perfect friend for me came about 2 months later. That night, while taking him out for a walk around the park before going to bed, we passed the old playground. Something told me not to cut through there, just complete the circle around the park and go home. But it was close to my house and I was really tired. At the playground, there were two guys I'd never seen before in black hoodies that was hanging out, one of them on the swing, the other on the slide. As I passed them, I heard the guy on the swing says, "Nice dog, can I pet him?" I said, "Sure." As one of the guys bent down to pet Roscoe, I heard a cocking of a gun and felt the barrel pressed hard against the back of my neck. "Give me your freaking money or you're dead." The guy from the side, who's now had a gun, said. The other guy leaped up and grabbed me and slammed me against the slide, dropping the leash in the process. What happened next sent shivers down my spine and filled me with excitement at the same time. Roscoe went insane. His eyes turned bright red, skipping the growling and clawing part, and went straight for the guy's neck. He leaped up from a sitting position, grabbed the guy's throat, digging his claws into the side of his neck and ripping out his vocal cords with his teeth. Blood spewing everywhere. As the guy fell to the ground, Roscoe still attached. The guy with the gun ran like a little bitch. The guy on the ground was gasping for air, blood pouring out of his mouth, the hole in his throat as he choked on it. He tried to hit Roscoe to get him off, but my boy was relentless, biting and clawing at the guy's face, ripping and tearing his eyes out, part of his cheek, and his entire nose down to the socket. Maybe I was wrong for this, but I don't care. After years of being messed with by assholes like these, it was great to finally get revenge. I started chanting Roscoe on, "Get him, boy, get him! Kill that piece of shit!" And that's just what he did. As the guy took his last breath, Roscoe stepped back and fell over, his body limp and lifeless. Blood covered his snout, with a piece of flesh and eyeball hanging from his mouth. 2 seconds later, he sprung back to life, happy and energetic, chewing on the eyeball piece like a play toy. "Good boy, Roscoe," I said as I picked him up, staring at his mutilated corpse that lay at my feet, and smiled. "Screw them, let the cats eat the rest," I said. I carried Roscoe, washed him off, fed him the biggest steak I had, raw of course, just how he likes it. I had the best night's sleep that I ever had that night, Roscoe right by my side. Homicide detectives and police flooded the park that day after, going door to door looking for the witness as to what happened. Mr. Jacobson, from 3 trails down, found the body. She's had to be given an oxygen and a ride in the ambulance to check out. It traumatized her so bad. I'm sorry, Mrs. Jacobson. I really am. When the cops came to my door, of course, saw nothing, and Roscoe was on his best behavior, lay on the living room floor, pretending to be asleep. I watched the coroners carry the body away. The cops finished up and went away. I asked my neighbor what happened, and she said some guy was mauled to death last night. The cops think it was some kind of wild animal that escaped from the circus that came through about a year ago and attacked the guy. There have been numerous bodies found in the area with wounds such as the ones they found today. They're writing it off as that. Roscoe and I couldn't be happier together. He has a loving home and I get to seek revenge. So if any of you assholes from my past are reading this, I haven't forgotten. I will find you. I will get you. Well, Roscoe will. He's not a bad dog. He's just protective. Good boy, Roscoe. When I was younger, I go visit my grandparents all the time. They live alone in a one-floor house with an unfinished basement. I never liked it down there. It felt like small for a big basement. There was a little door down there that was for storage, and I always got a horrible feeling when going close to it. And let me add that this was a newer house that was about 6 years. Now during the time I was about 6 or 7, I felt so uncomfortable going down there, even when I was with someone I didn't like. I didn't like it. I remember going down there with my grandma to help with something. She had to run upstairs because someone rang the doorbell. She said she would be right back, even though she knew how I felt about being alone down there. But I nodded and I said, okay. She was gone, I was alone, and I started to get a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. I didn't move and I didn't want to. Even though the lights were on now, this is where everything started happening, and it still gives me chills. The lights started to flicker, and I started to hear noises, and what sounded like talking, and it was coming from upstairs. Well, technically, I realized it was not actually coming from upstairs, but in the storage room itself. I heard someone say my name. Here is the part that freaks me out the most. The voice sounded like my grandma. I was confused as how the hell am I hearing her voice when she's upstairs? I didn't want to move, but me being the curious one I am, I started moving towards the storage room door. The closer I got, the worse the bad feeling came. When I got to the door, the lights turned off in the basement. I wanted to run upstairs and hide, go home somewhere that wasn't the basement. I heard my name again for the second time. My grandma's voice asking me to open the door to help her. So I did, and I regret it. I couldn't see anything, it was pitch black. I couldn't hear anything but faint laughing that felt like forever. But then the laughing stopped, and the lights turned back on in the basement, and I felt a little bit better when the lights back on. But the downside, I could see a little in the storage room. I saw a small clown doll in the storage room, and my grandma hates clowns with a passion and wants nothing to do with them. So why is there a clown doll? I have no damn idea. Then the lights turned on in the storage room. I saw a red that looked like blood all over the place. I screamed and blacked out, and the next thing I knew, I was laying on the couch. My grandma looked at me and asking if I was okay. I have no idea if that was real or a dream, but sure as hell felt real. There is a small village on the island of Hawaii called Olaha. Nobody ever guessed the terrible secret this village holds, following the accidental drowning of a young boy many years ago. Today, the tragedy still haunts the villagers and their children. Back in 1947, a group of kids were playing on the banks of a deep pond outside the village. One boy accidentally tripped over a log and fell into the water with a splash. Before any of the other children could react, the boy sank beneath the water's shimmering surface. For a few moments, they waited for him to surface, but there was no sign of him. Horrified, they ran back to the village to get help. Some local men came as fast as they could and dived into the pond, searching for the young boy. They were terrified by what they found. The boy was sitting on a rock at the bottom of the pond, with his arms were hanging down by the side and his body was swaying back and forth with the currents. His eyes were wide and his mouth was hanging open, but he was dead in the water. The eerie sight sent shivers down the spines of the men who had dived in to save him. They were deeply disturbed and said was such as an unusual way to drown. It was as if the boy had calmly sat down on a rock and waited there to die. They retrieved the corpse and dragged it onto the banks of the pond. Everyone who lived in the village was saddened by the tragedy, but after the funeral, they tried to put the strange death behind them. Afterwards, bizarre rumors began to spread around the area. In the middle of the night, villagers would hear unexplained screams and cries coming from the direction of the pond. At first, they tried to tell themselves that the haunting cries were just caused by the winds blowing through the tall trees. However, as time goes by, some people started to report disturbing experiences. Whenever people walked past the pond at night, they would feel something reaching out and trying to grab their feet. Many villagers believe that the ghost of the drowned boy lurked beneath the dark waters of the pond. They said that at night he would come to the surface cold, wet, and shivering, his icy hands clutching at unsuspected victims and trying to pull them into the watery grave. According to the rumors, he was trapped in this world by accident, and the only way he could escape was to find someone else to take his place at the bottom of the pond. One day, a boy was out walking with his father. When they passed the haunted pond, the boy picked up some stones and skimmed them across the water's surface. Suddenly, the boy screamed out in terror. Something was holding his leg, dragging him into the pond. The boy clawed at the earth, trying to hold on, but it was no use. Before his father had a chance to grab a hold of him, the boy was pulled down into the watery depths. The desperate father jumped into the pond and tried to find his son, but there was no trace of him. Minutes later, he dived deeper and finally located the young boy. He was sitting on a rock on the bottom of the pond, arms placed at his side, eyes and mouth wide open, swaying gently to and fro in the current. The father grabbed his son, pulled him up to the surface. He made his way to the edge of the pond, dragged his son behind like a dead weight. Luckily, the father had taken some courses in first aid, and there, on the bank, he was able to perform CPR and resuscitation on his son. The man did everything he could, and finally, just when he was about to give up, he saw his son's chest rise and fall, and the boy coughed up all the water in his lungs. The boy was alive. After that, all the parents in the village warned the children to stay away from the pond. A priest was brought in to bless the waters, and the local people felt that would put an end to the haunting. However, on particular dark nights, when the evening skies were as black as ink, those who lived closest to the pond claimed that they could still hear the boy's terrifying screams. Some say that he would never find peace. Nowadays, nobody dares to venture close to the pond, and every child in the village knows the story of the drowned boy. No one knows when the ghost will once again grow restless and try to claim another young life. I was around 12 years old. Now I was 15, but back in 2016, a couple of days before Christmas, the worst thing happened to us. We found out my auntie died, which was on my dad's side, and they were very close. She was a jockey, and she fell off her horse, and her horse crushed her. And her favorite thing was the smell of lilies. This will be useful for later on. Anyway, about 2 years of her death, we visited her again for Christmas, and we have been here to see her many times, but this time it felt different in a way. The air was heavy, and I got this wave of dread. It was so overwhelming that I had to stay in the car for a bit. Once I thought that the bad feeling had calmed down, I decided to hop out and look around the cemetery. And as I was doing so, I smelled a familiar smell, like the smell of lilies. And at first it was comforting in a way, but then I felt like that I was being watched. But like I could tell that whatever that was watching me didn't want me here like I needed to leave, so I listened to my gut feeling and booked it back. To the rest of the family, not shortly after, once all of us were in the car driving back, we saw that there was something in the middle of the road, so we stopped, but the longer we stared at it, the more we realized it was my auntie, and she looked worried, and about 2 seconds later, a car comes flying by in full speed, and then she disappeared. I'll tell you now, it scared me, and I couldn't sleep that night. But the longer I thought about it, the more I realized that she saved us that day, and that she really is looking over us.
I hope you've enjoyed yourself for some scary tales from Reddit, but I must be going now, as the end approaches of a new dawn. But always remember, the spookiness never ends. But before I go, a Halloween poem. There's magic in the air and mystery. There's nonsense everywhere for you and me. The black cat's eyes are bright. The moon sails by deep in the whispering night. Across the sky, the old clock says it's late. Near 12 he thinks. A pumpkin on the gate glows red and winks. The wind says phew around the house and goes away without a sound. Where? No one knows. There's magic everywhere, and in between, the fires flash and flare, a twinkle may be seen. There's nonsense everywhere, and apples red and green, but near a thought of care this Halloween. And also, well, it's time to go. Until next time, and remember the old traditions. Wear a costume, pass out treats, never blow out your jack-o'-lanterns, always check your candy, and also, have a happy Halloween.